Nobody was supposed to see this happen. 1 second, the media world was spinning like usual, predictable outrage, recycled clips, fake calm. The next second, everything detonated. Screens froze. Group chats erupted. And a single, chilling realization began spreading faster than anyone could stop it. Joe Rogan had figured it out. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a bad take. According to insiders, this was the moment Rogan realized he had been fed something false, and the trail led straight to Kash Patel. What followed, sources say, was not debate but fury. Controlled. Surgical. The kind of anger that comes when someone realizes they were used as a weapon without consent. And then the name Charlie Kirk entered the blast zone, and suddenly nothing was off limits. Old clips resurfaced. Claims once treated as fact started collapsing under scrutiny. Social media flipped from certainty to chaos in hours. Twitter turned into a war zone. Fan bases cannibalized each other. And Rogan's tone, long-time listeners swear, changed overnight. Here's what makes this terrifying. Insiders claim Rogan didn't just get mad. He got receipts. Leaked messages. Quiet confirmations. Timeline discrepancies so bad they couldn't be explained away. And once Rogan realized the story he helped amplify might have been engineered, not discovered, the countdown began. Because when Joe Rogan feels betrayed, he doesn't whisper. He exposes. And according to those closest to the situation, what's already surfaced is only the beginning. The first warning sign wasn't loud. It was subtle enough that most people missed it entirely. Longtime listeners say it showed up as a pause, an extra beat of silence where Joe Rogan normally would have joked, shrugged, or moved on. Instead, he stopped. Replayed a thought. Reframed a sentence. And that's when people closest to him say the internal alarms went off. Because Rogan only slows down when something feels wrong. Behind the scenes, the mood shifted fast. Producers noticed Rogan requesting transcripts from previous episodes he'd already cleared. Clips he'd laughed through weeks earlier were suddenly being scrutinized line by line. One staffer allegedly asked what he was looking for. Rogan's reported response was chillingly simple. I want to know exactly how confident he sounded. That confidence, insiders say, was the problem. Kash Patel had spoken with certainty. Not opinion. Not speculation. Certainty. The kind that makes people stop questioning. According to leaked internal messages, that certainty was what allowed a specific claim about Charlie Kirk to travel unchecked, from podcast discussion to viral clip to accepted truth in less than 48 hours. And once it landed, it detonated. Charlie Kirk's name started trending alongside words like exposed and caught. Commentary channels lined up for reaction content. Sponsors were tagged. Affiliations questioned. And while Kirk stayed publicly quiet, sources say his phone never stopped ringing. His team was already tracing the narrative backward, and every path allegedly led to the same origin point. That's when Rogan allegedly started asking the questions he hates having to ask. Who confirmed this? Who else independently verified it? Where did the timeline come from? The answers, insiders claim, were slippery. Each explanation led to another explanation. Context shifted. Details blurred. And the more Rogan pushed, the less solid the story became. A producer reportedly flagged a single sentence Patel had repeated multiple times, word for word, across different conversations. It sounded rehearsed. Worse, when compared against publicly available records, it couldn't have happened the way it was described. Not unlikely. Impossible. That's when Rogan stopped assuming mistake and started suspecting manipulation. Sources say Rogan didn't confront Patel immediately. He verified first. Quiet calls were made. Off-the-record questions asked. Individuals allegedly present during the events in question were contacted, not to accuse, but to confirm. The responses came back quickly, and they didn't match the viral narrative. Key moments were exaggerated. Motives implied that didn't exist. Context stripped until only the most damaging version remained. That realization hit hard. According to insiders, Rogan felt less embarrassed than angry. Not because he was wrong, but because he'd been confident. Confidence given to him by someone who spoke like they knew more than they did. And that, to Rogan, crossed a line. The first confrontation was private and cold. No raised voices. No theatrics. Rogan allegedly laid out discrepancies one by one, letting silence do the work. When Patel responded, insiders say the language changed instantly. Fact became interpretation. This happened became this is how it felt. That shift was everything. Rogan reportedly asked a single question that ended the benefit of the doubt. If it wasn't solid, why present it like it was? According to one source, Patel didn't deny shaping the framing. He justified it. Attention. Impact. Engagement. That justification, subtle as it was, allegedly ended the conversation. Not with yelling, but with something worse. Finality. Days later, listeners noticed Rogan's tone sharpen on air. He talked about how authority shortcuts skepticism. About how repetition can manufacture reality. About how people mistake confidence for truth. He never named Patel. He didn't need to. The audience felt it immediately. Comment sections exploded with speculation. Clips were dissected frame by frame. Then the social media chaos began. Screenshots surfaced from closed chats, showing identical talking points posted by different accounts within minutes. Captions mirrored language used before certain clips even went live. One leaked message sent shockwaves through media circles. Once Rogan says it, it's real. That line reframed everything. Suddenly, this wasn't about one false claim, it was about a system. A belief that Rogan's platform could be leveraged, that his trust could be assumed. Fans started digging. Old posts resurfaced. Timelines were mapped. Retweets stacked unnaturally fast. Rogan responded indirectly, but unmistakably. He admitted trust can become a blind spot. He said he should have pushed harder sooner. Then he drew a line that felt like a threat and a promise at the same time. If you bring something to his show as fact, it better survive scrutiny. The internet split instantly. Supporters praised accountability. Critics accused him of backpedaling. Patel's silence became deafening. Charlie Kirk finally issued a brief statement about mischaracterize, without naming names, which only fueled more speculation. And just when it seemed like the damage might stabilize, insiders whispered about something else. Something Rogan had seen, but not released. A clean timeline. Boring on the surface. Devastating underneath. Dates that didn't line up. Conversations that couldn't have happened. A cornerstone claim with no foundation at all. No one would confirm it. No one would deny it. And that uncertainty ensured the story wasn't slowing down. It was accelerating towards something far bigger than anyone expected. The moment the word coordinated started circulating behind the scenes, everything changed. What had looked like a single bad narrative now felt like the tip of something far more calculated. Insiders say Rogan's team stopped treating this like damage control, and started treating it like an investigation. Old episodes were reopened. Off-air conversations were replayed from memory. Even throwaway comments, lines no one ever thought twice about, was suddenly being examined as potential. That line went nuclear. Clips spread faster than anything he'd said in months. Reaction videos flooded timelines. Fans split into warring camps. Some hailed it as the most honest thing Rogan had ever said. Others accused him of trying to rewrite history. Patel's name began trending alongside phrases like manufactured and amplified. Then came the twist no one expected. A source claiming to be part of a private strategy chat released a partial transcript. Not emotional. Not explosive. Tactical. Cold. Timing, framing, rollout. And buried in that transcript was a sentence that froze the conversation mid-scroll. Once Rogan says it, it's real. That screenshot alone shifted the entire conversation. Suddenly, the question wasn't whether the original claims were true. It was how close Rogan came to being used as a delivery system, and how many times that might have already happened without anyone noticing. Rogan responded without panic, but with something rarer, admission. He told his audience he should have pushed harder sooner. He acknowledged that trust can turn into a blind spot. And then he pivoted sharply. He said he didn't care who you were. If you brought something onto his platform as fact, it better be solid, because if it wasn't, he'd be the first one to say so. That moment fractured the internet. Supporters called it accountability in real time. Critics called it damage control wrapped in philosophy. But behind the noise, insiders say something far more personal was unfolding. According to multiple sources, Rogan had received confirmation that Charlie Kirk had been privately briefed weeks earlier about the claims being circulated, and that those claims didn't reflect reality. Not publicly. Not defensively. Quietly. That revelation reframed everything. If Kirk knew and chose silence, then the fallout wasn't avoidance, it was restraint. And that restraint suddenly looked vindicated. Then another leak hit. Internal analytics. Engagement data. According to a media analyst with access to platform metrics, content attacking Kirk outperformed neutral coverage by staggering margins. Reaction channels gained tens of thousands of followers overnight. Certain accounts exploded out of nowhere. The implication was unavoidable. Someone benefited. That's when the audience turned investigative. Old posts were dug up. Deleted tweets resurfaced. Connections were mapped in real time. Who boosted what? Who shared first? Who echoed language verbatim? Retweets stacked within seconds in patterns that didn't feel organic. Comment sections turned forensic. Rogan stayed mostly silent during the frenzy, which only made people listen harder when he spoke. And when he did, he dropped a line insiders say was meant as a warning, not a conclusion. He doesn't get mad when people are wrong. He gets mad when they're confident about things they didn't verify. That line wasn't about the past. It was about what he was still reviewing. Because according to people close to the show, Rogan wasn't finished auditing what had passed through his platform. And if that was true, this exposure wasn't the end, it was the beginning. By the end of the week, the industry felt different. Figures distanced themselves publicly. Statements were issued clarifying positions without addressing specifics. Certain claims quietly disappeared from pinned posts and bias. The narrative softened, but the damage didn't. Trust doesn't reset just because people stop talking. And just as exhaustion threatened to cool the fire, a new rumor reignited everything. Whispers of documentation still unreleased. Material reviewed privately by a small group. Not leaked. Not posted. Just shown. A clean, methodical timeline that didn't accuse anyone directly, but didn't need to. Dates that didn't align. Conversations that couldn't have happened when claimed. One central assertion, the one anchoring the entire story against Charlie Kirk, apparently unsupported by anything at all. No one would confirm the document existed. No one would deny it. And that uncertainty ensured the controversy didn't fade. It metastasized. Because if that document ever becomes public, this story doesn't just escalate, it flips completely. And according to insiders, the people who've already seen it didn't walk away angry. They walked away quietly. The quiet was the most alarming part. Not outrage. Not denial. Silence. Insiders say that after the existence of the document began circulating, conversations changed tone overnight. People who had been loud for weeks suddenly stopped posting. Group chats went dormant. Reaction channels hesitated before uploading. It was the kind of pause that only happens when people realize the ground underneath them isn't stable anymore. According to sources familiar with the private reviews, the document wasn't dramatic. No accusations. No commentary. Just timestamps, travel records, public appearances, archived communications, and one unforgiving timeline laid out in plain language. Boring at first glance. Devastating when compared to the claims that had gone viral. Events that were said to be sequential overlapped impossibly. Conversations described as first-hand couldn't have occurred when or where they were claimed. And the central allegation, the one that justified everything that followed, had no verifiable origin at all. Here's what made it lethal. The document didn't say anyone lied. It simply showed that the story, as told, could not be true. And once that realization hit, there was nowhere to redirect the blame. No nuance could save it. No reframing could soften it. Facts don't argue. They just sit there, daring you to explain them away. Insiders say Joe Rogan saw the material and didn't react the way people expected. No rant. No explosive monologue. Just a long pause and a single comment to his team. This changes how I look at a lot of things. That sentence alone sent chills through media circles, because when Rogan reevaluates, he doesn't stop at one story. He rechecks the entire pipeline. The internet, meanwhile, sensed something was wrong. Engagement slowed in strange ways. Clips that should have gone viral stalled. Comment sections filled with speculation instead of certainty. Fans began asking different questions, not who was right, but who knew what, and when. Neutrality no longer felt safe. Silence felt louder than statements. Charlie Kirk's restraint suddenly looked prophetic. Kash Patel's absence from direct response became the focus of every discussion. Analysts debated whether denial would even help at this point. Journalists whispered about stories they'd killed quietly, claims they'd repeated without sourcing, moments they wished they could rewind. Rogan finally spoke again, carefully. He didn't reference the document. He didn't name anyone. But he talked about something deeper, how narratives survive not because they are true, but because they are convenient. How people confuse alignment with accuracy. How being first is rewarded more than being right. And then he said something that felt like the closing of a door. Once you see how it works, you can't unsee it. That line landed differently. It wasn't commentary. It was a warning. Because if Rogan has truly started auditing his own platform in public, this controversy won't be remembered for who got embarrassed. It'll be remembered for who got exposed next. Behind the scenes, insiders claim more material is being reviewed. Other stories. Other moments. Other confident claims that never got the same scrutiny. And that possibility has people terrified, not because they are guilty, but because they were comfortable. The final twist is this: no one knows if the document will ever be released. Some say it's being held deliberately. Others say releasing it would collapse too many narratives at once. But everyone agrees on one thing: if it goes public, there's no walking anything back. This